Welcome to the Grazing Grass Podcast, episode 79.
Everyone's situation is different. Everyone needs a different type of cow or a different system to use that works in their area. So there's not always a specific answer to the questions that you have. And sometimes the best way to find that out is to test it and figure it out by yourself.
You're listening to the Grazing Grass Podcast, helping grass farmers learn from grass farmers. And every episode features a grass farmer and their operation. I'm your host, Cal Hardage. You're growing more than grass. You're growing a healthier ecosystem to help your cattle thrive in their environment. You're growing your livelihood by increasing your carrying capacity and reducing your operating costs. You're growing stronger communities and a legacy to last generations. The grazing management decisions you make today impact everything from the soil beneath your feet to the community all around you. That's why the Naude Research Institute created their Essentials of Regenerative Grazing course to teach ranchers like you easy-to-follow techniques to quickly assess your forage production and infrastructure capacity in order to begin grazing more efficiently. Together, they can help you grow not only a healthier operation, but a legacy that lasts. Learn more on their website at noble.org/grazing. It's noble.org/grazing. Be sure and listen in the upcoming events for grazing courses coming near you. On today's episode, we have Naude Schoeman from South Africa. He's 18 years old and he lives on the family farm where they raise grass-fed beef and mutton, also some pecans. Very interesting story finding out what they're doing. In addition to the farm, they also have some destinations or rentals or Airbnbs as another income stream, which is very interesting. I think you'll really enjoy today's conversation. However, before we talk to him, 10 seconds about my farm. And like this, 10 seconds deteriorates or changes to every week or very frequently. It's the weather. We are getting some rain, and I'm very excited about the rain. We are in a D1 drought, so we're not really in a drought. We're just abnormally dry. We're right on the line. If you go northwest of us, it really gets dry. We're in pretty good shape right here, but we have slipped in from D1 level, which is abnormally dry, into that, or D0, which is abnormally dry. We've slipped into that D1, which is just the start of a drought. I watched Sun Up that's put out by Oklahoma State University. And on their show last weekend, they were talking about over the last year, we're down about 10 inches of rain. We've actually had it spread out pretty good, but we've been dry lately. So excited about this rain. My rain gauge was not as full as I was hoping it was, or would be, but it's still coming down, so still hopeful there. Weather's cooled down. That's really nice. I hope things are going good where you are. Let's talk to Naude. Naude, we want to welcome you to the Grazing Grass Podcast. We're excited you're here today.
Thank you very much, Cal. Thank you for having me here.
Naude, can you tell us a little bit about yourself and your operation?
Okay, so I'm 18 years old. I'm finishing school this year. I've been helping on the farm probably from 2017 a lot. We run this farm as the family, me and my mother and father, and my brother. My brother's 2 years younger than me. The plan is to go and study at the University of Northwest, and then after I finish that, I'll be coming back to the farm and farming, yeah.
With your schooling there, are you finishing up school this year and then you'll go to university next year?
Yes, so I do homeschooling. So I do Cambridge, so I'm writing the last exams now in a month. I'll be finishing, and then I'm going to this university. Yeah.
Oh, okay. And where are you located?
We live in Potchefstroom in Northwest. We live here in the Vredefort World Heritage Site, is where our farm is situated, next to the Vaal River. On our farm we do accommodation, like weekend accommodation that we rent out for like family getaways and things like that. And then also the food production, which is beef, mutton, pecan nuts, and we're starting with vegetables this year.
Has your farm always did beef and mutton?
So we had beef on the farm, but in 2015 we had a drought, so then we had to sell most of our cattle, and we actually restarted the cattle farming again in 2017. And then from there we started building our herd again to get it to the point where it is now again at a much bigger scale. We only had about 7 left in the beginning of 2017.
And what kind of cattle did you purchase?
Initially we started with Nguni cattle, which is an indigenous breed, but we had some problems with the carcass quality of the Nguni. So they didn't put on as much fat as we would like for the meat that we sell directly to the consumer. So we started crossing them with Boeran, which is also an African breed. And the Boeran has a lot of the same attributes as the Nguni, the fertility and the parasite resistance, but they also gave us that bit more fat on the carcass, which really helps a lot to give you much better carcass quality and also take your cattle through the winter much stronger.
For our listeners that aren't familiar with Nguni or Boeran, you talked about them just a little bit. Can you describe them in a little bit more detail, how big they are?
They are both medium-framed cattle. I believe the Nguni more like the cows are like 350 kilograms. I'm not sure what's the ratio to pounds. And then the Boerans are a bit heavier. They would be more to 450 size, but we don't want a big framed animal, because big framed animals can't really live in our environment, because we have a lot of mountainous area and rocky area, so we need something that can climb into the mountains and get food in some places where it's not accessible to most cattle breeds. And also during droughts and winter they have to maintain their body condition, and that's much easier for bit smaller framed animals.
And with the Boeran on there, are they able to finish on grass?
Yes, so our cattle live on 100% grass. We don't give them any supplement grain or anything like that for growth. So it is very important for us to finish our cattle on grass only. And the Boeran really brings some good attributes to make that possible for us.
And what kind of forage are your cattle grazing?
So our farm has mixed forages. We have a range of forages from a bit rocky mountain areas with hard grass and very low carrying capacity. And then we have some places that's more valleys with deeper soil and better grass quality. Our rainfall is about 26 inches a year in a 4 to 6 month period. In the summer we get most of our rain. Yeah, I think it's more dry than most of your areas there. Yeah, and it's a lot hotter, so we need animals that can adapt to that.
So you have a really a rainy period and then dry winter, and the rest is pretty dry. What kind of challenges you guys have to deal with?
We have to have a very good plan of how we're gonna graze during winter, because we don't do any winter feeding or bale grazing or anything like that. You really have to have a set plan in the beginning of winter of where you're gonna graze and how you're gonna get through the farm and still have grass left, because sometimes the rain can be unpredictable. So you can have rain coming 2 months late, and then you still have to have extra grazing left for in case that happens. So we have a system of grazing called high density grazing, where we move our cattle at the best times 8 times a day. Sometimes in winter we'll maybe move them twice a day or once every 2 days or so. But that really helps to utilize your grass as effectively as possible and not waste any grass. And it also really improves the quality of your grazelands.
That sounds like quite a bit of work to move them that much a day.
Yes, so we have one which we call the herder, but it's not really a herder, it's the guy who moves the temporary electric fences that we have. So he's with the cattle the whole day, and we have 2 guys rotating. So 1 week they work there, and then the other week they change. So then the other guy works there. So if it's far from our main farm where we live, they sometimes even sleep in a tent closer to the cattle so that they can spend enough time there to move them as much as possible and keep an eye on the cattle. And that also really helps with disease prevention, because sometimes if there's a sick cow, they see it within the first day or 2, and they see that cow and you can treat it. And same with the calves, or anything that can be a risk to the cattle is really eliminated by that herder being with the cattle every day.
And you said that just a while ago that you're using electric fence to create your paddocks for each move?
Yes, so we have temporary electric wires. In summer we use 1 strand of wire, and the sheep is still kind of a problem for us, or we don't manage them as effectively as we want to, because they move with our herd of cattle. They normally walk in front, so they kind of graze selectively, but the cattle come after them and clean it. In winter we use two strands of electric wire just to keep the cattle in when the soil is dry.
So you're moving your cattle and sheep together, at least fairly close together?
Yes, so when we are more in open pastures where there's not a lot of trees and bushy areas, we like to keep the sheep in front of the cattle so that they get enough nutrition, because after the cattle pass, there's really not a lot of forage left. But when we're in an area where it's a little more like on the hangs of the mountains, or even areas with more bush, then they will come behind the cattle, because they can get into that branches and places where the cattle can't reach, and then they'll eat in there and graze more of the leaves and things like that. So then they'll graze after the cattle, but they normally, they graze together. So the sheep also has a temporary corral where they sleep at night, which get moved every once or every second night, which really helps for the parasites. So they move together permanently.
And what kind of sheep do you have?
So the breed that we use is called a meat master. It originally started as a breed between the Dorper and Damara. So the Damara, which was a really hardy breed that could withstand very harsh temperatures and really difficult conditions, but they had a bit of a problem on the carcass quality, similar to the Ngunis that we have. And then they crossed them with a Dorper, which wasn't as hardy as a Damara, but they had very good carcass quality, and then they just started selecting for the attributes that they wanted. So the Meat Master is also a very hardy, very fertile.
Now, I'm assuming the Meat Master is a hair breed, since Dorper is.
Yeah, the Meat Master is a hair breed. I think it makes it a bit easier. We really want a system that's not very high maintenance, that's a low impact, easy system to use, and that's why we want these breeds that's not a lot of work and needs a lot of attention and can actually kind of survive on their own with only the help of us with the grazing management.
Very good. Now, one thing with your sheep and cattle, as I think about South Africa, I'm not sure where all the large predators live and your wildlife there. Does that cause some management challenges for you?
We in South Africa, we don't really have, like most people from out of South Africa believe, lions walking around everywhere. We do in fact have leopards that will occasionally move around here, but they're not really a big problem. Every now and then, every few years, we'll lose a few calves to them, and then we'll realize that the leopard has passed again, or we'll see warthogs that have been caught and eaten. So then we know. But the real predators that we're dealing with is more smaller, like jackals and smaller cat breeds that's more dangerous to the sheep. So we have a really good fence for the sheep where they sleep at night, which is strong enough to keep predators out. And then to keep the calves safe, we really select for good mothers in our cattle. Our cattle also have horns. We don't remove their horns, so that helps to keep predators away.
With your sheep, you talk about pinning them up at night. You also have your herdsman out there that's moving your cattle and sheep multiple times a day. In the U.S., U.S., other countries too, but we use livestock guardian dogs. Do you all use anything like that to help protect your sheep, or is it mainly just the herder and the nightly pins?
Yeah, so we have considered using guardian dogs. We've looked into it, but at the moment we're not really losing a lot of lambs and calves due to predators. So we feel like maybe in the future that would be something that we could consider. But at the moment, it's not really a problem for us. So it's just going to make the management harder to keep a guardian with them. And the other thing is also we don't know, because it's not a lot of people use livestock guardians here. We really don't know how it would fit into our system and how it would work. But that's probably something to consider in the future.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. You have to figure out what works for your area. And if it's working good what you're doing, then by all means continue. Do you have your cattle and sheep, lamb and calf at the same time? And what time of year is that?
They calve in the beginning of summer or in beginning of December. So the reason why we decided on that, first thing is that if you look at the antelope around in our area, they're all lamb and calf at that time. So automatically we realized that that's more the natural time for them to lamb. And then we found out, or some people told us, and we found out a little bit about what other people say, and they said that when you have a high body condition on your cattle, when they calve, the chances of them getting pregnant is much higher, and that we've really seen that we are getting a higher pregnancy when we let them calve on green grass, so that their condition is better. And then with the sheep, we're still kind of finding the breeding season for the sheep. Currently, we let them lamb in late summer, so then the condition of the ewes are still high, but then you don't get that parasite infestation on the lambs, because that can really set the lamb back, and lambs can get much weaker if they get attacked by parasites. So that's been working very good for us, letting them lamb in the end of summer and going into winter. Then we also don't wean our lambs, because we're not like the conventional system on an 8-month lambing period. So basically putting the rams in every 8 months. We're on a yearly system, so the ewes wean their lambs by themselves, and then they'll be ready to get mated again in the end of the next year.
And at what age are you all slaughtering or processing your lambs?
So the lambs, we currently processing them between 1 and 1.5 years. So then we can get the grading that we want in South Africa. They work on the A2, which is the best. A is the age of the lamb, which is the youngest, and 2 is the amount of fat. So A2 is the perfect lamb that you can get. But in the future, we'd like to, with improving our genetics, move to more between 8 months and a year. So probably about 10 months would be the ideal time to slaughter them, but we haven't been able to do that just yet.
Oh, yeah. And with your cattle, at what age are you processing them?
So we process our cattle at about 3 years of age. The thing with the oxen is they keep growing. So the longer you can keep your oxen, the better. But so we'll probably, in the beginning, when we do pregnancy tests on our cattle, we'll start by slaughtering cows that didn't get pregnant. And then as soon as we've slaughtered all of the cow, we'll move over to the 3-year-old oxen, which will then be slaughtered in the next few months. Normally about between 3 and 4 years. You can slaughter them at 2.5 years if you really need to. So let's say, for example, that it was a drought or something, and we needed to get rid of some of the cattle. We can slaughter them early as well. They still have grade 2 grading, so they are fat enough, but they just have a smaller carcass, which is a bit lower profit.
And is the plan to sell direct to the consumer?
Yes, so currently we're processing 1 cow every second week. We process our meat by a processor that we know, and then we sell the meat directly to the consumer. So we don't have any pork in our sausages, in what we call boerewors here in South Africa. We don't have any pork in there, so it's 100% beef. So we can assure our customers that it's a clean product that they're buying, and we're also mixing the herbs that we use in our boerewors ourselves, so that you're not getting that processed and GMO things that you would buy in the shop.
And when you direct market your beef and mutton, are you located near a big city, or do you do farmers markets? Do you all have farmers markets, or is it more just the consumer comes to the farm?
No, so our farm is about 30 kilometers out of our town, which is Potchefstroom. Potchefstroom is quite a big town. We still call it a town. I don't know if it classifies as a city yet. But yeah, in Potch, we also have the University of Northwest. So it's quite a big town. On Saturday mornings, we go to I think it's like a farmer's market, basically, that we sell our meat. So our grass-fed meat mostly gets marketed from there, but then we also market it via WhatsApp, and then people just picks it up from a place in town where we deliver it from.
Very good. Yes. Now, you all started doing this about 5 years ago. You all bought some cattle. What have been some challenges that you maybe didn't anticipate?
I think one of the biggest challenges have been getting into the mating season. That's really difficult with the cows, to get them all lined up in the same season. Sometimes you lose 1 year from a cow if you want to move them to the right mating season. So that's been one of the big challenges, and we've only now 100% fallen into that mating season. But I think probably the other thing is pregnancy rate. I've moved now to a much more effective lick that we use, a mineral supplement that we mix ourselves, that have really pushed our pregnancy up from 60-something% to the high 80s. So that's made a huge difference in our pregnancy rates. And at the end of the day, that's really where the profit comes from, is the pregnancy rate.
Yes, that makes a big difference when you're able to increase that pregnancy rate. Now, Naudé, just about the general cattle production in South Africa. I've never been there. Can you just tell us a little bit about how beef cattle are raised in South Africa? Is it something we'd be familiar with or not?
So the normal system that's used by farmers is there's probably farmers that do the cow or calf operation, and they just supply calves to the feedlot farmers. So feedlots will normally buy that from the farmers, the calves, and then they'll raise them and then probably sell it again to the next line in the chain that sells it to the consumer. So it's a really long line from farmer to the consumer. We're trying to get that line shorter. And the thing is also with the breeds that's normally used here in South Africa is not the most grass effective breed. So we strive to get an effective grass converter into meat. But most cattle are bred for high feedlot conversion. So to get as much growth from the feed that they take, and that's completely a different cow than the one we're trying to breed.
And what breeds do you typically see?
So we have a lot of the probably one of the most popular breeds in South Africa is the Bonsmara. I don't know if you know the Bonsmara. So that's, as far as I know, it's across. It has some shorthorn in Hereford, and then also an African breed, the Afrikaner. So that's probably the most popular, and then you have Hereford, Angus, things like that. But this more grass type of cattle is really, the demand for them is really increasing for things like Boran and Goonie. That's a much more constant form of income and a much lower risk for the farmer.
Well, that was leading into my next question. Are you seeing grass-fed products and regenerative practices on the increase?
Yes, and yes and no. So you always have that one part of the market who just wants the cheapest product. They're always looking for the prices, and they don't really care about the quality of the product. And then the other side, we really have an increasing market of people who's really doing a lot for their health. So when they see us and they see we have 100% grass-fed beef and mutton, they are very excited and glad that they can finally get this product, because it's really not very popular. We're probably the only people in our town doing it. And you don't see a lot of farmers that's doing this 100% grass-fed, because it's a much longer process. It's much longer time before you turn that cash around, because like I said, it takes 3 years, and you have to work on your cow genetics, on your herd genetics. So it's probably we now, after 5 years, only first getting the best, the first calves that we really want, and we're not getting the amount that we want yet. We'd soon like to slaughter 5 a week, but it really takes a long time to get into that system, and I think that's what a lot of farmers are scared of, and they don't want to change their system into this much longer system, slower system actually.
Oh yes, very good. Now you mentioned earlier you also have pecan trees.
Yeah, pecan trees. Our pecan trees are not in production yet. So we have about 17 acres, I think, of pecan trees, or 15 to 17 acres, but they're still small, so they are not in production yet. We planted the last lines this year, so they will, as far as I know, take between 5 and 7 years before they will get into production. But then we'll start marketing from there as well. So we're trying to diversify our farm as much as possible. That lowers risk, but we don't want to do it all at once. So it's a slow process. If you're going to focus on too many things, you're not going to do it properly.
It does take time. You're right. With those pecan trees, are you all grazing that area right now, or is it something for in the future when they get more mature? Do you plan to graze it?
Yes, so we do graze the pecan field from time to time. So what we try to do is, with the high density grazing, we're trying not to graze a place more than 2 times a year. So once or twice a year. So we'll probably come in late winter or so and clean that area, so that we can have an open area to work with, to replace dead trees and to plant new lines of trees. So we do graze that, and we'll just put a temporary electric fence around each tree just to protect them while they're still small. But we also have an electric fence around the pecan nuts, so just to protect them from monkeys that can eat the nuts later, but also now against porcupines and things, because especially now in late winter, we are moving into summer now. The porcupines don't have a lot of food in the wild, so then they'll come in and they'll eat the trees. And the first year that we planted pecan trees, we lost all the trees that we planted. I think we planted about 500 and they ate all 500 trees.
Oh, wow. Porcupines, I couldn't have told you they would come in and do that. That's interesting.
Yeah. We didn't expect that. It was really a shock the first year before we had a fence to see all the trees being eaten, and every morning you get there and then there's again a few trees, 10 or 20 trees eaten, and then before the next year we lost all of them. So then we decided the next year we're going to put a guard there during the night just to protect them while we were putting on the electric fence. So the permanent electric fence around there, and since then we haven't had a lot of problems with the porcupines coming in and eating the trees.
Oh, yeah. Now, in addition to the beef, mutton, pecan trees, you all do accommodations. Tell us a little bit about that, just so we have an idea of what you're doing there.
Okay, so our farm, like I said, is situated next to the Vaal River, so it's also in the Vredefort Dome World Heritage Site. So it's kind of a tourist destination as well. So we have a few houses that we rent out, ranging from a 2-sleeper to a 14-sleeper. That's normally used over the weekends, sometimes during the week as well, and over school holidays we are really fully booked. And then it's just a nice getaway for friends and family to, especially Potch, and we're not too far from Joburg as well, so we get a lot of guests from there.
So that's a great way to increase diversity on your farm and increase the income. Has that presented any challenges to your grazing operation?
Not specifically to the grazing operation. It does give us some challenges with the workforce sometimes, because sometimes there's things that needs to be done at the cattle, or I mean at the livestock, and then there's also something that needs to be done before the weekend at the houses, cutting or mowing the lawns and things like that. That's sometimes a challenge, and so to use the workforce effectively is sometimes difficult, but it didn't really, to the grazing system, it doesn't make it hard. Actually, the grazing system helps with the houses, because all our houses have roofs, so like grass on the roofs, and that's really a fire risk. So in the beginning of winter, we'll graze an area all around the houses in order to just save them from veld fires, because that's really a big risk in our areas, the fires that come in late winter. And because we have a mountainous area, it's very hard to kill that fire. So if you have a fire, that it can run for kilometers.
Oh, yes. That's a great use of your resources to negate a potential risk there.
Yeah, so in the beginning of winter, we'll first start by grazing the highest risk areas around the houses, and then also around our farm we graze, we can call it a fire barrier, basically a 30-meter barrier around the farms, because we take off all the grass. We use 100% of the grass by the cattle, so then that strip really helps. And then we'll also cut the farms into blocks, and so then when it burns, you can kind of manage that blocks so that it doesn't spread throughout all the farms.
Oh, yeah. Sounds like an excellent plan there. So do you typically see wildfires each year close to your farm, or how big a risk is it?
Yes, so this year we've been lucky. So far, the last fire was about 10 kilometers away from our farm, that they just stopped today. But this year we've been lucky, nothing too close to ours. The last really big fire that we had was in 2018, where it burned down thousands of hectares in our area. And then it was a bad wind, and the fire just ran too fast to control. But since then, a few small fires here and there, but but the fire barriers really helped a lot since we've been doing that. So we feel safer when there's a fire in our area. Not to say it can't reach us, but it's not that much stress when there's a fire.
Yeah, I see what you're saying there. You brought up a few things. You're working on your genetics with your animals to get them to be, more of what you're wanting to market and get that quality product. I've got the pecan trees planted for future, and you've got the accommodations. So you have a lot of things going on. As you look towards the future and going to university and your brother getting older, what's some of those plans for the future for the farm?
Yeah, so we're kind of in a difficult place now. We have a lot of things that's almost ready.
Yes.
So probably by the time I'll be back, these things will be in motion. But I'd really like to expand the beef herd a lot, and the mutton and all of this small things that we've started, and get it into a proper weekly slaughter so that we have our own slaughterhouse on the farm and process our own meat and things like that. And we'd like to just get the scale of what we do now much bigger. So we're not necessarily planning for, maybe we'll do something like pastured pork and tried eggs and things like that. Maybe that will be something that we can consider in the future. But for now, it's just to expand what we've been building up to now.
Oh, yeah. Well, Naudé, let's take a little bit of a shift and go into our overgrazing section where we eat. Whoa, I don't even know what I'm saying. Where we talk about something in a little bit more detail. And one thing talking about is managing your ecosystem and improving it. And you're using grazing to do that.
So before we did high density grazing, before 2017, we really started realizing there was something wrong with the management. We saw erosion, we saw patches of grass dying, bush encroachment killing all of the grass. The wildlife started disappearing, and we knew something were wrong. And we heard about this new system mimicking big herds of antelope. And we started applying this, and just the guy, or as we got to know it in the beginning, is removing all of the grass like a big herd of antelope would come, and really trampling some of that grass. And it made a lot of sense, because now you have a barrier there protecting the soil cap, keeping moisture in, keeping the temperature down. And we've seen an explosion of wildlife, of birds coming back. Like I said, warthogs. Even though the leopard comes now and then, or the leopards, and catches a calf or two, that's still a sign that wildlife is restoring. We have kudus and we have small antelope that's around here, and it's just amazing to see how the grass have improved. You see places where we have where we had bare areas before is lush grass, and places where we had bushes taking over, there's now still trees, and you're getting more of the savanna effect with trees but grass growing under the trees. And it's amazing to see how everything's coming together just by doing a small thing like changing the grazing management. And we also trying to we're not using any poisons for any trees, or we're not spraying poison, or even on our cattle, since 2018, we haven't done any parasite treatment, because our environment is so healthy, and the system that we use, just the parasites can't handle it. So we haven't had any tick problems, things like that. Just the ecosystem, you can see the ecosystem getting better again, and that's amazing to see how everything fits together as soon as everything's healthy.
How soon after you all started with your high density grazing did you start noticing an increase in the wildlife diversity?
So the wildlife diversity, from the time when we started it, we started taking off some of the inside fences on the farm and things like that. So the animals automatically had more roaming space, or it was easier for them to roam around. So it really takes a long time, and I think we're going to see much more happen. But since the time we started it was just, we saw it building up. And probably now, this year and last year, we have seen the biggest difference in the number of wildlife that there is. But I think we don't know what it is yet. And the other problem is that now, when we don't have predators or a lot of big predators, we have to find out where's that balance, and where we'll have to start hunting without hunting too much, but keeping that balance. So that's something that we'll still need to figure out.
And did you notice when you start your high density grazing on the vegetation there, how quick was the adjustment to your vegetation?
So within the first year, we've seen a difference. I'd say the biggest difference was after 3 years, 3 grazings basically. Then we saw an explosion of different grass species that we haven't seen before, and in areas where there wasn't a lot of grass. But within the first year, you could already see that green spots where you had manure spread, because now your manure is also spreading much more evenly than before. When you had let's say a 400-acre camp and let the cattle graze the whole area, you only have manure at the water and the lick. But now they spread it more evenly. So the first year we did it, we saw this. We didn't realize what it was. We saw this 3 green spots, and we didn't know what it was. And the next year we realized, oh, it's the manure. And we saw dung beetles, a lot of dung beetles returning. And it looked almost like moles, some of the dung beetles, because they can dig up to a 1.2 meter hole. So within the first year we have seen a difference, but I'd say 3 years was the biggest.
Oh yeah. And with your high density grazing, one thing you've talked about is those multiple moves during the day. Did you all start immediately when you all got your cows in 2018 with those numerous moves during the day, or did you work up towards those moves?
Yeah, so in the beginning, like I said, we only had 7 oxen. That was still left of the previous herd that we have had. So we gave them a small strip, and we moved them about twice a day or 3 times a day, moving them only 1 meter at a time. So we try to do it that regularly from the beginning. But I'd say we do graze more intensely now that the herd is bigger. We've brought in some cows over the years, and the progeny has also grew up to give their own calves. So yeah, I'd say it's more effective now, but the amount of moves pretty much stayed the same from the time when we started.
Okay, very good. Well, Naudé, it is time for our famous 4 questions. Same 4 questions we ask of all of our guests. Our first question: what is your favorite grazing grass related book or resource?
So I don't know if I would be able to name a specific one, but I have listened to the podcasts that you have on Spotify. So it's really easy to, wherever you are going, whenever you can put that on and listen to the podcast that you have. And I'm really glad that you're starting in Africa and South Africa also now, because that's really interesting to learn from farmers in our area as well. So I'm very excited for that.
I agree. We are working to get more international guests on here. So hopefully we can grow that presence and just give voice to more voices out there.
Yeah, that's wonderful.
Naudé, what is your favorite tool for your farm?
That's a difficult one. The one thing that we wouldn't be able to live without is probably the electric fences. We don't have a lot of gadgets and things that we use. We try to keep electronics and things like that in the field now as minimum as possible. So for example, we have an ox wagon with 2 oxen that helps moving the electric fences and buckets and things like that. And that's kind of things. And the bicycle is probably the most high-tech thing that we use other than the electric fences. So in the field, we try to keep it low maintenance, but I think without the electric fences, our it would be much more difficult to do this system. There is some people in South Africa who uses herding only, but in our area, I don't know if herding would be effective.
Yeah, electric fence has done wonders for frequent moves. For our third question, what would you tell someone just getting started?
I'd say probably the thing that I've learned is that there's not always an answer to the question that you're asking. Sometimes I want to start something and I try to Google as much, look on YouTube, look through books, everything, and then I can't get the answer. And it's not because there isn't an answer, it's because no one have tried it yet. And sometimes the best way to learn is just to try something on your farm and see, because everyone's situation is different. Everyone needs a different type of cow maybe, or a different system to use that works in their area. So there's not always a specific answer to the questions that you have. And sometimes the best way to find that out is to test it and figure it out by yourself.
Yeah, great advice. Great advice. Naudé, lastly, where can others find out more about you?
I have an Instagram called Life in a Dome. You can see there sometimes I put some things about the farm and how we graze. You'll get some information there. Then we also have a website, Schoemanshof, or www.schoemanshof.co.za. That's our website. We don't have as much information about the grazing and the farm more side. That's more the accommodation, but you can see some of our things there. And then, yeah, we also have a Schoemanshof grass-fed Instagram. That's the meat side, and mostly Schoemanshof on Facebook. So you can check all that social media platforms, and then, yeah, you can message us, or you'll get our number on that platforms if you want to get in contact with us.
Very good, Naudé. Appreciate you coming on and sharing, and we'll have those links in our show notes. And I encourage you, go look at the Instagram accounts, because they've got pictures of cattle and terrain, and especially for someone from Oklahoma to see what it looks like in South Africa is just a treat in itself. Naudé, thank you for coming on and sharing with us today.
Thank you very much for the opportunity, Cal. Thank you for giving me the time to tell you about what we're doing here and what we're achieving, and how great the nature is working for us. Thank you very much.
You're listening to the Grazing Grass Podcast, helping grass farmers learn from grass farmers. And every episode features a grass farmer and their operation. If you've enjoyed today's episode and want to keep the conversation going, visit our community at community.grazinggrass.com. Don't forget to follow and subscribe to the Grazing Grass Podcast on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, and YouTube for past and future episodes. We also welcome guests to share about their own grass farming journey. So if you're interested, fill out the form on grazinggrass.com under the Be Our Guest link. Until next time, keep on grazing grass.